The Red River Farm Network is celebrating Women in Agriculture. It is our special series that we call Agricult-HER. Of course, we can't do it without our sponsors, good folks from the Minnesota Soybean Research and Promotion Council, Minnesota Corn Growers Association, North Dakota Corn Council, Ag Country Farm Credit Services, and Van On and Company. And an old friend, I'm glad to have a chance to connect a little different in our series here. Marri Tejada is with us from Panama. Marri and I, we go back from your time back to Southwest Minnesota when you were from Marshall, Minnesota, and then on to the Minnesota Corn Growers Association. First of all, pleasure to have a chance to connect with you.
Thank you. And it's nice to see you again, Don. It's been some time.
It has been. I love the background you have behind you. It's great to have that view of the canal.
Yeah, you can see it here, like the entrance of the canal, like right over here. And if this is just a mirrored window, if you see where I'm looking, you can see the entrance of the canal. But it's a nice view. I can see the boats lining up, or leaving or coming or whatever they're doing, and it's like a city on the water that changes every single day.
Well, tell me about this journey. How do you go from Southwest Minnesota onto the Twin Cities, onto the DC area, and then internationally?
Yeah, so I'm from Marshall, Minnesota. I grew up on a family farm. We had corn and soybeans and swine. When I was little, we had a full fair to finish operation, and then later in the years, we had a ISO wean to finish operation. And yeah, I a seventh generation farmer. Some of my earliest memories revolve around early mornings, rock picking, spraying beans, and of course, respect for my dad's rule of see, think, and do, which is shaped really who I am today. I have this picture here on the slide of my dad and I building this barn, and probably many of your listeners can relate. But I love this picture because I remember working the farm with my dad, and the job never quit. So one Sunday morning when I decided to sleep in, he was quite upset about taking a day off. So it was a nice memory of hard work, and that's definitely shaped who I am today.
See, think, or do. That's quite a philosophy.
Yeah. See a problem, think about the solution, implement the solution.
Very cool. And then from there, you went to the corn growers?
Yeah, that's right. And so from there, I went to Minnesota Corn Growers Association, and was working there under in the communications world. That's where you and I had first met. And shortly after that, a position opened in Washington, D.C. for the U.S. Grains Council, again in communications. And I spent several years there in Washington, D.C., and eventually became the director of communications for U.S. Grains Council. And then when this assignment opened up in Panama, I decided to, try to expand combine my interest in international relations and agriculture, and move down here to Panama City. And I've been here for 10 years, if you can believe that.
It is hard to believe. Time goes fast. So what inspired the interest in international agriculture?
Well, I can't say that I was inspired by international agriculture just as much as as international relations, and trying to understand, or be immersed into another culture and understand another culture. And this opportunity really combined my interest in supporting the U.S. farmer back at home. Of course, my family farm, my family's farms, and the farming economy in rural Minnesota. I think about that every day as I'm implementing different programs to try to increase or sustain farm gate prices, and what can I do to help that? So it was really a really great opportunity to combine those two interests.
So educate me. What are some of those opportunities you see for some of those Minnesota exports finding their way into Panama or Latin America itself?
Well, Latin America is a great place for U.S. agriculture. I mean, we have many free trade agreements around the region. I can't remember exactly if it's 11 or 12, but certainly a number of free trade agreements. And then we also enjoy very close logistics. You know, it's sometimes 4 to 7 days from the Gulf, where going to Asia is several weeks. So it's a backyard market. It's a sustainable market, and it helps to sustain the farm gate prices or export prices. So if you've got 10% of your production left in your bins, Latin America is a good place to put that last 10%.
So is it primarily commodities, or do we look at ethanol there as well?
Yeah, great opportunities for ethanol. I think Latin America and the Americas in general is one of the world's leaders in use of ethanol. So, we have some markets here that are major producers of ethanol, but maybe don't necessarily use it in their own gasoline. So, trying to work with local producers to create mandates and laws that will help, of course, develop the same story that I saw, growing up in Southwest Minnesota, how corn and the investment that the Corn Growers Association had and the national associations had put into learning and researching and developing the ethanol market, and the change that brought to rural America, trying to mimic that here in Latin America. Of course, the production that they have is not enough to sustain an E10 or E15 blend mandate, and that's where we come into play. So we develop the market together with the domestic industry, and the U.S. is able to support any shortfalls in their demand.
Making that transition, you said you've been there 10 years. What's been the biggest surprise for you in that time?
Oh, the biggest surprise. Um, Maybe like when I first moved here, it was a huge culture shock, right? Like coming
Had to
from
be.
hot off the DC market, where everyone is hustle, 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 and giving their careers and developing their careers, and it doesn't matter who you run over, like you're gonna build up your career. And moving here to Latin America, where the hustle is different. I'm not going to say it's less, but it's definitely different. So that was tough for me to learn right away. I had some staff that rejected that style, so that was a big learning curve. But also, embracing the culture. Latin America is really a people, human to human connection type of culture. So, for example, I used to send an email that would be very casual and just say, "Hey, where are you at on that project? Thanks." And sometimes my staff would be like, that was kind of rude. Like but now it's like that I've gotten to learn the culture. Maybe it's like, hey, how are you? How is your kid's graduation? Did you end up, getting the cake that you wanted? I hope everything turned out. And where are you at on that project? Thanks. So it's not necessarily a better or worse. It's just very different. So that I think was the biggest change for me. It was just to understand the culture, learn the culture, and that way I can, on behalf of the U.S. farmer, make relationships that make sense and show that we're a trusted partner. And even though we might have some cultural nuances, together we can make and improve the lives of the people that we're representing.
We're pretty blunt, probably as Americans. So when I think about it, I guess culturally, are there differences in the role of women in business in the U.S. versus Panama?
Yes, yes. I have a different perspective because I'm an American working in Latin America. But if I look and see Latin American women working in Latin America, it's very hard. There's a lot of pressure, a lot of societal pressure. You have to look a certain way. You have to be a certain, you have to have your makeup, your hair, your body, your clothes, your style. You also have to be, seen as a perfect, maybe not perfect, but a very upstanding community, involved in the community. You need to be a good parent, a good wife, and fulfill these roles. I think I think I've seen women in Latin America have more pressure internally and more pressure from society on what it is to be a woman in business, especially a woman leader in business, versus the United States, where we have more. It's more common to see women in leadership roles.
So, educate me. What's a day like for you in your current capacity?
Well, I have to say, like, one of the things that I love the most about my job is that there's not 2 days that are the same. And so in the morning, I usually spend my mornings catching up with colleagues around the world. Um, Maybe talking to the Colombian Trade Association about a specific program, maybe a promotion program, maybe talking to a importer about a boat that might be stuck on the water or have some sort of trade implication. Um, or maybe I might be signing agreements with MOUs, or maybe sending a trade team to the United States. We do a lot of trade teams, so it's very different. Every single day is very different, or we have a very small office. Sometimes we run out of toilet paper. I got to run out to the store and get the toilet paper. So we wear many hats here. I have 15 people on my team, and very proud of my team, and trying to help them develop their career, their skill sets and goals. Meanwhile, accomplishing the mission of the organization is very fulfilling. It's very different every single day. And then, of course, I am still a mom. So, like the end of the day, I come home to my kids and my husband. We do bath time, we do bedtime, we do all of that. So it's never a dull moment here.
So, I love the pictures. What's the most rewarding part of your job then?
I mean, I think the people. I think the people have been the most rewarding, and of course the opportunity. Working for the U.S. Grains Council can be very challenging, especially dealing with political dynamics. It can be both challenging and enlightening. But each day I gain a greater appreciation for diplomacy and cultural nuances, and these challenges have really shaped my career and opened doors that I never imagined. And, like I already mentioned before, ultimately, all of the efforts that we undertake here in Latin America go back to supporting U.S. agriculture and supporting, my family back home. And that's what drives me to keep going despite the challenges.
How do you stay grounded with home and that connection back to the States?
Well, the increase of video conferencing has certainly helped. And my family is pretty dedicated to getting together, and we try to get together minimum of once a year, but maybe up to 3 or 4 times a year. We try to get together. I just saw them last month, and we'll see them again as a group in July, and that's helpful. And we have a WhatsApp chat group, and we're always sending pictures and keeping in contact, and that's great. And my husband is actually Panamanian, so his family lives here, so we see them all the time. All the time.
That's very cool, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. And he has a sister who has 2 kids the same age as my kids, so we like to get together because the kids can play and entertain themselves, and we can have a little bit of a adult break from kid entertainment. So it's really wonderful.
How old are your kids?
My son is 5 and my daughter is 2.
Oh, very cool. Sometimes I think in ag we get isolated a little bit, get into our own little world. What would you recommend to young people to get out of that comfort zone and maybe travel internationally or look at some of these maybe bigger picture opportunities?
Well, I think traveling internationally should be required by any young person. It's really changed my perspective. When you're the foreigner in a country, it changes how you view foreigners in your own country. especially dealing with language challenges. And so, sometimes you find people that are very, very willing and helpful. And sometimes you find people that are very standoffish and it's like, well, I'm not going to try to communicate with you because and maybe not for rudeness but for shyness, like just kind of I'm not really willing to go out of my comfort zone to embrace someone who's not familiar to me. And when you're that person and people embrace you in that way, it's really wonderful. And so then when you go back home and you see other people in your community that aren't from your community, and maybe you see them struggling, reaching out to them in that way can make a really special and lifetime connection to people that you might not have ever imagined. It's pretty wonderful. I think it's pretty important.
It is important. The first international experience I ever had was on a U.S. Grains Council mission
Oh,
to
really?
Japan.
Where to? Japan. Okay.
Yeah, and I think it does. It gives you a broader perspective. It changes how you look at things when you come back home. It really has a huge impact, and it gets you that itch to do that international travel again too, I think.
Sure. Well, in Japan, I mean, everything's different. I mean, the air is different. The trees are different. I mean, it's a totally new world over there.
Yeah,
It's very
it was
nice.
a wonderful experience. Um, I've really enjoyed the chance to connect with you again and have this conversation. Um, any other thoughts you'd want to leave folks with? And we're looking at this in the viewfinder of women in agriculture. But I'm really proud to see what you're doing. It's really cool.
Yeah, well, thank you for the opportunity. And in the theme of women in agriculture, and what I had mentioned before about Latinas here, and the pressure, we have those same types of pressures as women in the United States as well. And what's helped keep me grounded in that way is a very famous quote that Ruth Bader Ginsburg used to say. It's like, you can have it all, but maybe not at the same time. So it's a reminder that we don't need to excel in every domain, right? Your career, motherhood, marriage, personal health, all at the same time. Your priority shift, and that's perfectly normal. But women in leadership bring in diverse experiences and perspectives and solutions, especially in agriculture. And I'm a mom of a young girl, so when women lead, they open doors for the next generation of daughters and nieces and young women, and it shows them that these roles are within their reach. So I encourage all of my women out there to use your voice, make your connections, and don't be afraid to shine when you can. And if you're struggling in one area and excelling in another area, that's normal. That's normal, and give yourself a break.
Great message. Mary, it's been a treat. Really appreciate this.
Thanks, Don. I appreciate it too.
Again, Mary Carrow, when we first connected, and Mary Tejada. Am I saying it right?
That's right, Tejada.
Tejada. Thank you so much. Again, good chance to get a different perspective in this edition of our series, a series we call Agriculture. Awesome. Man, you're good.
Oh, thanks. Thanks. You asked some other questions.
I'm sorry.